Didn't get enough carnage and chaos at Daytona? Well, you're in luck. Atlanta is on deck. Let's break down the odds with WinTheRace.info. I am now joined by Greg Matherne from WinTheRace.info. Greg, thank you so much for being on the show. Daytona this past weekend was action-packed, also very wet. How'd you do this weekend? And can you tell fans a little bit about some of the stuff that went down with FanDuel? I know you and I were talking about it before we started recording here.
Yeah, absolutely. It's great to be back on, and we did really well over at Win the Race. We had a great weekend. We cashed on truck winners. We got Sanchez on the truck side, and then we had Byron as well. So we did really well. Had a couple other little props here and there that we cashed at as well. So we had a great weekend.
Nice.
It was a fun weekend to watch. A lot of great racing. You know, you mentioned the FanDuel thing. I think it's something that a lot of folks have been talking about on Twitter. I know I had a lot of people, reaching out to me and asking, "Hey, what's going on here?" And just on, really basic level, the states do regulate all of these books, right? But the states regulate at a very high level. Hey, you can accept books on, races. You can accept books on MMA. You can't accept a bet on WWE because it's scripted and we're not going to let you do that. So that's kind of where the states regulate. But the books themselves get to do a lot of their own regulation. They get to set their own rules. And FanDuel has really strict rules about what happens in delay. FanDuel's rules say 24 hours. They are the strictest in the industry that I'm aware of. Nobody else is that strict. We were more than 24 hours, so they voided all the bets. The one thing I'll say is a lot of people had bonus bets that got voided that didn't necessarily get credited back. So if you are one of those people, I would reach out to FanDuel, and if the first person that you talk to doesn't help you, try again, because I know people have kind of gotten mixed results depending on who they're talking to.
Let's talk Atlanta, Greg. I think it's time to move on. Daytona is a thing of the past. We've got to talk about another super speedway, back-to-back, doubling up on super speedways to start the year. NASCAR really went off this time. William Byron won the Daytona 500. He's also a two-time Atlanta super speedway winner in this next-gen car. I imagine he's got to be one of the favorites this weekend, but do you think it's worth taking that kind of risk?
Yeah, so he's definitely listed down at the favorites. It's another super speedway, not quite as much. It's a little bit racier. There's a little bit more control for the drivers. But I mean, it's still pack drafting. You're still gonna kind of get some big wrecks, and that pack drafting ability is really important here. And as you mentioned, he's won twice at the reconfigured Atlanta. He just won the 500. He's won at Daytona previously. He's really good at this track type. And he is down at the favorites. Most of the favorites are listed around plus 1,200. They're around 12 to 1. I don't know that he's value at that price. I think that's a little short for my liking. I did see him at one book out at 13, and that was at MGM. And I've not bet it at 13 because I'm actually going to tell you I've got a little bit better way to get some Hendrick exposure. But again, depends on where you are. But if that's the only option that you have on him and you like him at 13, our model says that's good. And we've seen him be really good here. Yeah, 13 to 1's a fine bet on Byron. If you don't have anything else, that's where I'd go. His teammate, obviously, Chase Elliott, has been really good here too. Actually, also has Alex Bowman. Kind of weirdly, the outlier here has been Kyle Larson, who has not been as good at the reconfigured Atlanta as his teammates. But we also know that Kyle Larson can draft, now that's kind of been a weakness in his package that he's really tightened up the past couple of years.
Yeah.
So the way I actually prefer to get exposure to these guys, if you have it, is Betway has Hendrick Motorsports to win the race at plus 350. And I think that's actually a great value. You get 3.5 to 1 to get 4 drivers who are all very competent here. 2 of them have won races here. They've won 75% of the races at this track. And I think that's a great bet. That is only available at Betway, and I know that's not a particularly widely available book, and the other books have that around 320. I'm not going to bet it at 320. I think the value is right at that 350 mark. So that's my way to get exposure to Byron this week. I've bet that plus 350. I think that's a great bet. But if you don't have that and you do have MGM, yeah, 1300 is a perfectly reasonable bet on Byron this week.
Yeah, Byron definitely be good, but I like that if there's a way to kind of rope all the Hendrick Chevrolets together. I mean, you just said it with Chase Elliott included. They've won 3 of the last 4 Atlanta Motor Speedway races. I really like that pick. What about some underdogs? As always, we like to talk about some value picks. I'm just looking at the basic stats, and I notice Daniel Suarez has finished in the top 10 in 3 of the 4 Atlanta reconfigured races. I look at Eric Jones, who got a top 10 at Daytona this past weekend. He's won at Daytona twice in the past, and at Atlanta, he's got a couple top 10s as well. Are there any drivers such as those or others that you are especially keeping an eye on this weekend?
Yeah, those guys have been really good here. The problem with betting on them at this one is the top 10 market is just not a great market right now. I think as we look at these super speedway races, the top 10 market does not tend to be a great market anymore. The books have made the odds not very attractive for bettors. They got beat pretty bad a couple of years ago on top 10, specifically at Atlanta. They were kind of treating it more like a traditional, mile and a half the first year that we were in this reconfigure, and the books got beat pretty bad on the top 10. So we're not getting a lot of great value in that market. That said, I'll tell you, for the long shots, there is still some good value out there. If you have available to you Bet365, Todd Gilliland is plus 4,000, 40 to 1 to be the top Ford. Oh. And we just saw him last week at the Daytona 500. We saw him drive up to the front, drive to the lead, hold the lead, racing against drivers who were pushing behind them. That was not a point at the race where they were in fuel saving mode. They didn't have any wrecks at that point, but they were racing hard during that section. And, he only surrendered the lead at that point when he went into, get gas and, kind of came out and didn't get back. But then he pulled himself back up to the top 5 again, until that wreck. So, Todd Gilliland, I don't think it makes any sense for him to be that long. If you look at some of the other books, he's as low as 25 to 1. I wouldn't bet him at 25, but if you can get anything longer than 30 to 1 on Todd Gilliland as top Ford, I think that's a great bet. And I think 40 to 1 at Bet365 is just absolutely crazy. That makes no sense to me.
I like that. I like that Todd Gilliland highlight right there. What about Corey LaJoie? He's always a popular pick coming to Atlanta. He's got a couple of top 5s at this track, and he just scored a top 5 at Daytona. Is there any way, shape, or form that Corey LaJoie has value this weekend, or are fans in the books starting to catch on too much?
I think the books have caught on to him, at least from the betting standpoint. I think depending on where he qualifies, you might see some value in him if you're playing daily fantasy. He's offered us a lot of value in the daily fantasy world. He ends up not being owned enough. But from a betting standpoint, unfortunately, he's just not. There's just not enough value because the books are kind of scared. Honestly, the books are scared in general this week. There's not a ton of value out there. The bets that I've talked out here, it took a while to find because there just wasn't a wealth of value available to us. So we're kind of looking forward to hopefully next week seeing a little bit more.
Yeah, that abbreviated West Coast swing will finally start to establish who maybe the real players are on a regular basis the start of this season. Great stuff, Greg Matherne from WinTheRace.info. Great to talk to you this weekend. Hopefully next time we chat, we can go to a more traditional oval like a Las Vegas or a Phoenix and maybe get an even deeper dive into some of the statistics.
Yeah, I'm excited to get to Vegas. I know a lot of drivers are too. We're going to have an exciting race this week. But from a betting standpoint, we're really saying, hey, our year begins when we get to Vegas.
Thanks again to Greg for being on the show. He has a ton of great resources available for free at wintherace.info. I'll put the link down in the description below. Always remember to bet responsibly. Always a good analytical conversation with Greg. We'll catch up on the latest NASCAR news in our next episode of Out of the Groove. Thanks for tuning in, folks.